Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone who joined us today. We would like first to thank Tedra Virtual Academy to give us this opportunity to give you some basics on artificial intelligence and its application in medicine. I'm Dr. Mahmoud Yassin Haj al-Mishadani, Assistant Professor in Molecular Medicine, Mohammed bin Rashid, College of Medicine. I will give you a brief introduction about the concepts of artificial intelligence and some examples of how AI can be useful in solving medical dilemmas. My colleague who's joining me, Engineer Yaman, will cover the practical application in terms of data processing and analysis. We hope that this short session will be useful for you, and we will be more than happy to answer all your questions. At the beginning, and before we talk about the artificial intelligence and its application, I think it's reasonable to define what is intelligence. We as a human being, we are considered as intelligent. So when you ask someone, what does it mean intelligent? We have to know it first before we talk about the artificial intelligence. So as everything in our life, there are different hundreds of definitions of anything. Intelligence is one of them. You will have different definitions for intelligence, but we will choose the simplest one that provide the common understanding for all of us. It is the ability to perceive or infer information from the outside and return them in our mind as a knowledge that we can apply it in the future as an adaptive behavior, a behavior that can be adapted according to the information within an environment or a context. If we can do this process, then we have what is called intelligence or cognition. It's a process. When we say the humans are intelligent, or anything that's intelligent should be able to do three major steps. These are, number one, ability to what? To learn from the outside or from inside, but to perceive the information and to learn from them. Number two, which is based on the ability to learn, is to find from the information that they receive if there is a problem or not. So the ability to recognize or identify the problems. Okay, after we identify the problems and recognize them, we have to have the ability to solve them independently. This is when we say something is intelligent or we are intelligent, we are able to learn from our experience, from the perception of the information. Then we will be able to recognize what is the problem in this information and able to solve it. Anything that can do this, we will name it as having intelligence or cognition. If we zoom in these three major steps, we'll have this cloud, as you can see here. This represents the steps that we have whenever we receive a new information or we receive just information, whether it is new or related to something new or something previously we know about it. The first thing we do is the sensing, is receiving these informations. Whether this information are speech, any language, we hear it as a language, or we read it or we see it as signs. So there will be input from the speech, or can be input from something that we can see, which is through the vision. So we have speech recognition and we have vision. All this is perception, getting the information, perceiving the information. To start with the second layer is to process what we hear. What are the words that we are talking about? What are the information that is carried in this language or in this speech or in this image? So we will process them and do all these together, which is, first of all, we check, is these words, what do they mean? Actually, by referring them to something in our mind, which is based on previous experience, which is the knowledge. This word means this one in our mind. And in this situation, it means that, not anything else. So we'll have inference. We refer it also. Is it logical, this information? Is these information are related to each other? We do assessment. We do explanation for them. All this is reasoning of the information. And some of them will be stored as a new information, as a part of the learning that we will get. And then it will help us to plan, to act for the information we get. What is this information that we received? Is it something that we have to act on it now or later, but we have to plan an action plan. And we recognize, because by the reasoning, we recognize the problem, and now we are trying to solve this problem. So we will have problem solving and the planning for the problem solving. After that, the last stage will be the acting. Okay, you get the information, you analyze it, you reason in it, and now you solve the problem. How you will solve it? By the action, whether this action by movement or by writing some or generating the words regarding it. So this is what we as a human are doing actually, and this is what define intelligence from our perspective. This is what we know. This is what we perceive. Also, this is our limited intelligence about how we are intelligent. So, as everything that we found in the nature, we have to mimic something or do something that is more feasible by making it artificial. I can't wait for the nature to make it. So, I will make it by myself. This is why now we have what? Artificial intelligence, which is, can we make something or machines other than the human intelligent also? They learn, identify problems, and solve these problems? Can they do this? So here we come with the definition of artificial intelligence. Again, different definitions, but we will use the simplest one. It is the science and engineering of what? Making here intelligent machines, not human now. Machines, can we make them intelligent like us? Especially, usually, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we are talking about computer programs, and it is related to similar task of using the computers to understand the human intelligence. So it is two ways: making the machines intelligent like us, and using the machine to understand how we are intelligent. So two ways. But again, as I told you in previous slide, this is our understanding of intelligence. It's the observed biological things. So the machines can not be confined to only this which we can see, observable. They can look deeper and understand how we are thinking. Actually, when we talk about the application of artificial intelligence in medicine, actually, artificial intelligence itself is an application in medicine. Yani it was made actually to understand how we think and improve this one. So the basics of artificial intelligence, it's dealing with the brain and with the way of we are thinking. So actually, from the beginning, it's not separate entity, right? So, but to talk about it as a discipline, to give it this name, we have to remember this gentleman. It's John McCarthy. He's an American computer scientist and cognitive scientist. So he is well known for working on computers. We're talking about the 50s and 60s, where the computers were looking like this, and as you can see here. And at that time, the use of the computers was very limited. But those people who are pioneers, they start to talk about the principles of artificial intelligence. Actually, his work started, as you can see, in the 1956 with this group of pioneers, mathematicians, and computer scientists. They are the fathers of artificial intelligence. They met together in a workshop that extended between 6 to 8 weeks in Dartmouth. It's called Dartmouth Workshop. They were discussing how we are talking about the principles of artificial intelligence and how can can be intelligent. But the wording, why Jordan McCarthy got the credit for it, because in 1979 he wrote an article ascribing mental qualities of the machine, and he meant, I'm quoting for you what he said. He said, machines as simple as a thermostat can be said to have beliefs. Now beliefs, and they seems to have problem-solving abilities. So from this time, we start to have a discipline called artificial intelligence. But if we look deeply in history and to understand the future, you have to know your history and the history, how this concept developed. We go back a little bit to another gentleman who's this is Alan Turing. He is the first one in 1950 who talked about in his publication in Mind. This is October 1950, where he talked about computing machinery and intelligence by him. And this was the first time we start to talk about, can machines think? These are the founding for artificial intelligence, actually. This Englishman, he's a mathematician, he's a computer scientist, he's philosopher, and he's also theoretical biologist. So look, again, when we go to the roots, you will find that those computer scientists, they were cognitive scientists also, and they were, some of them, they have biology basis to understand how the human are thinking to make machines replicate what they are doing. Why this man is very famous? Because not only for artificial intelligence and making the machines think, he saved the life of billions of people. How? By using his talent in mathematics. He is the code breaker, as you can see. This is the place where he lived for 2 years. As you can see here, the Germans in the World War I and II, they used sophisticated computers at this time. These are the first computer model. They were, although they were mechanical and using steam and using electrical pulse to encrypt the messages between the army, between the naval, between the submarines, between the top ranking. Even the German, they thought that nobody can find it because it needs a huge brain to decipher it. And they tried their best to find a solution. Till this guy, he described first algorithms, let us say, and he made two machines, one called Bombay and Tornigi. Both of them, they were able to decipher, and he break the code and turn the war to the side of the Allies and control the damages of continuing the war. So actually, these are the first examples of using, making the computers or the machines try to think instead of us. And he is also started to think or make what is well known in literature, which is the Turing test. In this Turing test, he mentioned that if we put an examiner in the middle who is connected to two, let us say, peripheral inputs, one of them managed by a human and the other by a machine. And he will send them questions, which is text questions, similar to when we write in the WhatsApp, not something that's very complicated. And he will receive the answer. He doesn't know whether on the other side is a human or the machine. The moment that he cannot, the receiver, the human, cannot tell whether it is a machine or it's a human on the other side, it means that the machine is able to think like the human. Because I can, from its response, I cannot tell if it's a machine or it's a human on the other side. This is a test, although there is a lot of philosophy behind it, but it can tell you that if the machine can answer in the way of a human that you cannot tell if it is made by a machine, it means that these machines can think. And from this time till today, the artificial intelligence, now we, as you can see, this very beautiful book, Artificial Intelligence, A Modern Approach, you can see that now the artificial intelligence from the 50s, now we are in 20. So we are talking about last 60 to 70 years. Now, while you are sitting watching this video, look surrounding you, look to your computers, look to your telephone, look to the car, how you came by the GPS. Everything in our life now, there is an application of artificial intelligence. Everywhere. We're talking about thousands of applications. The moment that even in your social media, everything now there is artificial intelligence. Hundreds, I can say thousands of applications. Usually they are commercial, but they can be industrial. They can be also in academic. We are using it, this artificial intelligence everywhere. You can see, for example, here, this is the Kasparov, which is famous for being top in chess. The first time the IBM made the computer that can think like him and beat him. But the problem of these machines, they were instructed how to beat him. And a human tell them how to think. But since that time, we start to improve them, and now we have the robotics, we have the GPS, and the others that can use, and the cars that can run by themselves using the artificial intelligence, the even recovery of ancient portraits and others, even using it for the space everywhere, as I said, everywhere. And the iconic guys here, one of the co-founders of the artificial intelligence. Now, so again, if we remember the artificial intelligence, and we said it's either making the machines think or making the machines understand how we think. So artificial intelligence can be divided into two approach. The weak one, this one, where we call it the human approach. It means that we want a machine, a computer, when we talk about machine and computer now, that can think like us and act like us. So you are just making a mini of you that when you give them the inputs and you tell them what to do, so they will act like what you will act. This is why we call it weak, because it doesn't tell me how we are thinking, how we are, well, how the process of intelligence, the deep steps of how we are thinking and acting. It will not give me that much information. While the strong AI, the one that we believe in and we want, and we think that it is the future with its application, is the ideal approach where we make the systems think rationally. They use their ration by themselves. They learn like us when we learn how to be rational. And then we'll act rationally without interference from our side. So it will be really a good, let us say, copy of you, copy of how you are processing the things, how the human are processing the things. And this will be like when, for us, the biologist, when we want to study something, we got an animal model and we test it outside our body, then we will understand how things are working, then we apply to our, to understand what's going on in our body. Here, this system who will think like us, rationally, I mean, it is like a human being outside, and you can examine it and change things to understand how we are really doing it. This is the strong AI, which now start to dominate the field of artificial intelligence. Many of us, even me, when I start to reading about this, you will be confused between three different definitions or names: artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. What's the difference between them? So they are not the same. They are different. The big umbrella is artificial intelligence. It is the science, it's the engineering to make the machines intelligent, as we said, or to understand how we're thinking. Machine learning and deep learning, they are subdivisions. They are, let us say, approaches how to get this artificial intelligence. So they are subsets, okay? Okay, why there is machine learning and deep learning? You remember the weak AI and the strong AI. When the machines, instead of telling them exactly what they have to do, like previously, when you tell the computers how to think, we said, why do I have to tell them everything? Let them learn by themselves. But this learning is under my control. I am controlling what they are learning. So this is the machine learning. This, let us say, the weak part of the artificial intelligence, that I still need to take the hands of the machine to learn. While deep learning is inspired by human brains, neural network. This is we call it deep neural learning, where the machine will learn without interference. They will get the data, they will decide what to do, and they will trial and error till they reach to the best outcome. So these are the difference in when we say artificial intelligence. It doesn't mean deep learning. Deep learning doesn't mean artificial intelligence. I mean, they are subset of the umbrella of artificial intelligence. To go deeper, to compare between machine learning and deep learning, as you can see here, in machine learning, instead of telling the machine that this is a car, we will train it for a certain time. We give it sets like this picture of when you see it, this is a car. So the machine will extract the features that will tell that these features are related to the car. So when I go to the test after that and I give it pictures, it will use the features that were extracted and tell us whether it is a car or not car. So there will be feature extraction that is guided by our labeling of the data, and then there will be classification based on this feature extraction that will be applied whenever we are giving a new data. But for deep learning, the situation here is different. I'm not telling, and this is what we are doing. Actually, in our life, we are not just telling it's a car or not. We need to know the color, we need to the maker, we need to know the model, a lot of informations. So how we learn this? By experience. So we will give the machine the pictures and they will by themselves do it in a continuous process, not a separate steps, continuous step. It is the feature extraction and the classification. So they will identify, it's like the neurons of our brain, how they are communicating to each other. This is they call it neuronal networking. They will analyze each point of the picture and then they will transfer this information or their, let us say, feature extraction to the second node and another combination of features and new classification. And they will trial and error. Is this classification worked or not? These are hidden for us. We don't know what's going on. We don't know. This is why we don't know what's going in our brain, actually. And this is also why we call it hidden, because not everything is known for us, and we do not interfere in this one. At the end of the day, this deep learning will tell if this is a car or not, its color, its maker, its model, and so on. And it will learn every time he can, the algorithm can improve itself, and so on. And this is now, as you can see here, this is now is the future of the strong AI, where we just give the data, and the data, the algorithm and the deep learning itself will decide which information are important and will trial and error and making I cannot say billions of combinations, and each combination will check whether it's successful or not. And every time they are doing this, they will learn from their trial and error. For example, here when we give the picture for the machine, it will, the first thing it will identify, as you can see, which one is light, which one is dark pixel value, and then we'll make different combination with different, like the neurons when they transmit it. And each combination can, if it is successful, there will be reward for the algorithm. If it is failed, there will be punishment or penalty, let us say. So the second level of they will identify these dots as the edges. Is it an edge here and from our nose, edge of the mouth, edge of, so it will identify edges. The second one, as you can see, when it is dark, it means it's successful or high degree of accurate outcome. And when it is white, it is less, and so on. So different combination, different trials at the same time happening till is able, for example, after the edges, he can find a feature, which is maybe combination of edges like the nose, the eyes, and at the end of the day, he will do more combination also and identify a face. Then will refer it to the database that they have and can tell you if this is George Washington. Every time he's doing this analysis, he is reaching to something, and then if it is this something is close or to the accurate answer, he will stress or choose this algorithm or improve it, or it can ignore it if it is not successful, and so on. And this is what's happening in our brain, our neurons, how they are communicating and building the learning process. As you can see from all what we said, medicine, from the beginning, artificial intelligence, as we said, it has the application because it is there to understand how we are thinking. But nowadays, let's take a patient. I'm as a physician, for the patient information, to take the information when you go to the clinic, your information, the history of your present illness, the past history, medical history, your demographic, your age, your family history, all these are huge data. This is what we are dealing before, since there was a medicine. All this information are huge to be analyzed by the brain of the doctor to add to them what we have now, hundreds of blood tests, the omics, which is thousands of gene expressions, the levels of the proteomics, huge information. And we're talking about population. We have all these data. The brain of the human, of the physician, cannot analyze all this to give an answer to the patient. And now we are very sure that each patient, each person, now we are three of us now, for example, are presenting. Each one of us has different genetic components, different ethnicities, all this affecting how we are, although both of us coughing, but my cough mechanism is different from the cough mechanism for others. So we need desperately the artificial intelligence to help, to guide, to redirect the resources of the doctors and medical staff to help the patient. So we have actually the application of artificial intelligence in medicine are more reasonable than any other discipline than medicine. Just to tell you an example, as you can see here, from 2016 till today, we have more than 29 FDA approved. Approved. It's not just a research or an idea. It's approved tools, AI tools based on AI or machine learning, as you can see, in all the disciplines: cardiology, endocrinology, radiology, neurology, internal medicine. These applications are there, and the doctors and the medical staff count on them in improving the life of the patient. So it's not anymore an idea or whether we need it or not. It is there, and it is showing. It passed a lot of tests to make it approved to be applied in the medical field. And for example, one of them is what is called virtual health guidance. For each person, for each patient, as I told you, it's totally different from others. We do not have, even if they are twins, they do not respond to the same. If they both of them they get COVID, this one is different from the other, although they are twins. And you saw it. You saw in real life that although we are taking the same medicine, which is Panadol, you will respond and you feel better. The others will not. We are different. So how to solve this? We have to put all the information that we gain from the patient, his social life, all the inputs relating to his social interaction with his family, with the people, with the community, his behavior, all these data we reported and we feed it to it as a data. His genomics and omics, proteomics, epigenomics, all his omics background, we feed it. Biosensors like the machines that we have now in our telephones can tell us the sense things in our body or in our activities. Immune system status, the microbiome that is living in our GIT, the structure, the anatomy itself, the environmental that where he's living. Where I'm living in Dubai is different if I'm living in Iraq, and so on. Physical activity, the sleep pattern, and I can report it. How he's eating, what is he's eating, what's the amount of eating. His medication history, his behavior like alcohol, using drugs, lab test, family history, communication, his speech, everything together. This is a huge data. We are talking about one single person. All this information. Tell me which doctor, which institute can analyze all this and tell this patient what to do. The only solution is to use the deep learning where it will take all this and will find connections that we do not know. I cannot connect between what is in the social and between the genome. I cannot. Nobody can do this, even if team working with this, unless the technology of artificial intelligence take all this information, find the hidden networking between them, and learn by itself, sparing us the time and the resources to find what is exactly good for this patient, which make him different than patient two, and so on. The second application in the cardiovascular disease, we know that number one cause of death all over the world, especially in our region, for example, is the cardiovascular. It's more than cancer. It's number one. And we know the life change everywhere, the stress of life, the sedentary life. We are in our cars all the time. are not doing activities, the food, all this increase the cardiovascular disease. And even young age, you can have cardiovascular disease. And we know that the historical doctor is the one with the stethoscope. We use the stethoscope. Even when I say I'm a doctor, they say, where is your stethoscope? Because you use the stethoscope to listen to the heart and to the lungs. So you can't imagine that even this now is replaced by, it is not replaced, it's now aided, helped by the artificial intelligence. So when you hear to the heart sounds, for example, or the conditions of the heart, you need years to be experienced with exactly what is the sound of this condition, not that condition. And sometimes you need your time for judgment rather than to collect the information, right? Especially when you are dealing with a lot of patients. So artificial intelligence here aided the physicians to be more efficient and to diagnose the cases more efficiently, the diagnosis. And also in selecting which therapy. Instead of trial and error, take this medicine and after 3 months, if you do not respond, I will change it. No, from the beginning, you are not suitable for this, and the AI will tell me that this will not be helpful. Shift him to the drug B from the beginning. So in both aiding in the diagnosis and selecting the therapy, this improves the clinical practice. And we cannot reach to the clinical practice unless there is a research and development. And the AI helped in understanding the huge data of the omics, as I said, in making what's called precision medicine to the case, to the person himself, not giving a drug that can work for everybody. No, for each person who have the same condition, we will find a signature that can make him respond or not. This can help us to identify new drugs, maybe, instead of the drugs that we are talking about. All this help the research and development, which will help the clinical practice. And if you have these patients by this AI, you will have impact on the population health, the community health, the world health. And this will optimize the resource allocation and will give us method of continuously monitoring the health of people. Now, as you can see now, we are using the AI without going to the doctor. There are applications where he could keep asking you, and then he will tell you whether you need to go to the hospital to see a real doctor or not. So this is one of important application in cardiovascular diseases. The second cause of death, which is cancer, also it's now increasingly all over the world. It's number 2 after cardiovascular, but it is a lethal. And when we hear the name cancer, we are afraid. And imagine now when we want to diagnose the cancer, it's when we diagnose the cancer, it's now we are in a race with time before bad things can happen because it's cancer. We can't predict what's happening. So we don't have time to act. Imagine what we get from the patient is a sample during a surgery or during an operation. And whatever comes, it's like when you dip in the water, you have 3 minutes just to collect as much as possible and go out. You can't go back to do the biopsy, or you will get wrong diagnosis and the patient will be maybe he will need surgery that he doesn't need, and so on. So the sample is very scarce. As you can see here, few tissues. We put them in slides and look under the microscope to see them. And the pathologist, he's a human being. He should try his best to tell the most important thing for us. Is this cancer from this tissue? Or is it from another tissue that come here? Because it's from here, I can resect it. But if it comes from other place, this is a metastasis, and it's very difficult. So now what they do, they put these slides, tissues, and they take high resolution picture. Then the AI will start doing the what we call, this is called TOD workflow, where we use the deep learning that can make the picture into tiny, small segments, and then extract from them the features, and then rank these features according to the importance. And then at the end of the day, will tell us if this cancer, imagine from these samples, can tell us it's primary or metastasis, and it can tell us which organ is affected, and then will give me this very nice interpretation and tell me what we have, as simple as that. And this was tested on more than 32,000 samples and learned from it by itself and developed a very good interpretation, and that can help us and save the life of hundreds and reduce the cost and improve the life of those patients. The third one, which is the catastrophe that everybody faced last 2 years, which is the COVID-19. You know about it, but you don't know that in the early stages of the disease, X-ray is very cheap and every facility can have it. So it is good to use it. But the problem that when you take the X-ray, you can't see anything. And the radiologist or the doctor cannot see any typical pattern that can tell us, is this COVID or non-COVID? And this is the problem. So what the researchers did here in this paper, they collected all the X-rays that is available online for the COVID. And they even cropped the pictures of the X-rays, which is in the publication. Imagine, look, they collected more than 112,000 X-rays. This is in data set one. And they got another data set in order to see there is difference in the system that acquired the X-ray, or is it from the processing. So they took group of hospitals that they use the same system of X-ray, and they collect the data, which is almost 97,000. Look to the numbers of X-rays. Which radiologist can do this together to learn from them a new pattern? Nothing. You cannot do it without the artificial intelligence. They put them together, they divide them into training images and testing images using the neural network to identify ranks that when you look, you can't see it. But for the machine, he can find a pattern that can tell whether this is COVID or non-COVID. And as you can see, area under curve in both data sets was improved very high, can reach to 90% accuracy, which is very important for us to use the X-ray in the early stages of the COVID. This is again here the same application, but here we can use the radiologist in selecting some cases where instead of seeing the 100,000 samples, he can see 10, 20, which were not queried by the AI. He can help the AI to improve their algorithms. And also it is implemented there. The fourth application, which is important, diabetes. And you know that our region have high rate of diabetes, especially type 1, which is where the pancreas fail to produce the insulin. Naturally, our pancreas sense the glucose and what we are doing as an activity, and will secrete amount that is equal to the sugar, to the glucose, and that will help based on the situation. But the patients who their pancreas failing to produce insulin will count on external. They have to inject themselves with this insulin. What's the problem? During a 24-hour, when we were a physician in the hospital, when we have patients like this, we start to give him insulin. We keep him in the hospital for weeks to monitor everything, make charts, and then we'll tell him the dose that he will follow. And instead of doing this, now the AI is doing that. How? By collecting all the daily information of the patients, the level of the glucose in every second. Now there are machines that connected and can tell you the sugar every second, and it can be connected also to the insulin device that gives the insulin, so we can know when the insulin was given and how much it was given and where it was given. At the same time, it can collect the data about the meals, the food, the nutrition, composition of this nutrition, and the activities. All these together, huge data that generated in every second, huge data is generated, will be sent to the artificial intelligence also to look for the features for this user, each user, and you can have different users, and each one of them can be different features. Then we'll prioritize them and tell us, actually it helped to generate what's called the alpha algorithm, where it can tell from the food, from the time, from the level of the glucose, that there will be an incident, whether the glucose will be very high or very low. So it will give you prediction to start adjusting the level of the insulin. And based on this recommendation, we can improve the control of diabetes in those patients. The last one is the neurodegenerative, which is the degeneration, the loss of, let us say, of the functions and the structure of the neurons in our brain that make us intelligent. These diseases usually are related to age, and sometimes in certain conditions, they are familial and genetics. They have you can't discriminate whether it is a disease or something related to age. It's very difficult actually to diagnose them. So we also now count on the artificial intelligence in telling us. We have three approaches there. The supervised learning, like the machine learning, we label the CT scans of the brain, and we give it to the machine, and the algorithm will train to improve the outcomes every time it evaluate the model and improve it, machine learning. Then when we give it unseen data for new first time, it will tell us the diagnosis based on the learning. This is the supervised. Unsupervised, usually we use it when you are using the omics to know the patients, all of them, they look like the same, like in Alzheimer's disease, all of them, they present the same. But each one, they have different molecular basis of that Alzheimer and their condition. So we do for them omics in unsupervised without telling them that this is patient one or patient two. We will develop multimodal patient data in unsupervised, and will cluster them to tell us those 5 have the same molecular basis, while those 6 have another molecular basis. And this will help us to subtype the patient and to tell which one of them have good prognosis, which one of them have bad prognosis. The model that is now implemented, which is the AI, the deep learning, where all the information of the patient are given to the algorithms. And here it's based on trial and error. The algorithm will learn with rewards and punishment before repetition of the thing and choose what is working and can help work with the doctor itself. It's like you have 2 brains, but the other brain have more power to help you in your decisions. These are a few applications of the artificial intelligence, and we'll just touch them. Each one of them needs hours for explanation. But as a message, we want to say that AI and medicine, actually, they are, from the beginning, they were twins. And the AI was invented or made based on how we are thinking and to understand how we are thinking in order to improve, to understand ourselves and to improve the way anything that is related to us. And one of them is the disease. Thank you very much for this part. Now I will hand over the presentation to my colleague, Engineer Yaman, which will take you into a practical session, how to analyze this, how to do what we talked about. And if you have any questions at any time, we are there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahmoud. So as Dr. Mahmoud was explaining, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, first of all. As Dr. Mahmoud was explaining, he explained the theory part of the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. In this part of the session, I will go through the concept of AI, deep learning, and machine learning, the practical part of them, how to implement them, and how to use them to build the applications of the AI in medicine. We will also come across data type that we will see in the medical, in most of the medical problems. We will also introduce the process of the data cleaning and the data processing techniques. We will list some tips to fine-tune and enhance our model. First of all, this is the overall structure of how to do any AI model. First of all, we will get the data. In the medical field, most of the data will come from the patients. So we will have the raw data coming from the patients. The patients here in the science of AI and data science, we call them samples. And the information that we collect from them, we call them features and input. So as we said earlier, we have many data type for building our model. We can have the gene sequence and the gene expressions data type. And also we can have the images that will represent some kind of information. We have many, as we all know, we have many medical images techniques such as MRI, X-rays, and many other imaging techniques that it allow us to see the process of the body. And as well as we have tabular data or signal data. The signal data, it's some kind of voltages that will go through the body, and then it will tell us an information about our body and about the process inside the maybe the brain or the heart. After we collect our raw data, we cannot fit this data into our machine learning or deep learning model. This is because the data might be inconsistent or it might be not clean enough to feed it to the AI model. So first of all, we have to understand our data. So how we are going to understand our data? First of all, we have to understand, we can read the description from the database. This is the first step that we can do as a data scientist. Then we will look into the features themselves, understand each feature, and understand the samples, the background of the samples, see some information about the samples, which are the patients and the people that we have. And then we are going to pre-process and clean our data. There's many techniques to do this task, and we will come across all of this in this session. After we have our data set cleaned and processed, then we are now ready to build and fine-tune our model. Building the model are different, a little bit different from fine-tuning the model. When we are building the model, we are just trying to have the best performance classifier or regression model in order to fit our data. When we fine-tune the model, we are improving some parameters and some layers. If it's about deep learning, we are improving some essential parameters in order to improve the model and get the best results and the best outcomes. After the training and testing process, the last stage is evaluating our model performance. There is some evaluation parameters that we will come across in order to see whether our model is doing the job correctly or not. So, at the first stage, I just wanted to show you how we are going to understand the data set itself. So in here we have this data sets. It's about diabetes. This data set is to detect whether the particular person have diabetes or not. So the top rows of our database is always the feature names. The feature names give us very important information about the database. So in here, we can obviously say that this is an essential features in order to detect whether these person have diabetes or not. And the rows here in our data set are the patients, or we can call them the samples. So each row represents one patient or one individual person in this data set. So this outcome is our output or our outcome. This will give us the labels whether this particular person having diabetes or not. So depending on these features, which are the blood pressure, skin thickness, insulin score, the age of the patient or the individual person, depending on all of these features, we are going to detect if the person have diabetes or not. So when we see that these features are giving us some particular information, that we will conclude this individual person have diabetes, so we will put the label as 1. And if we detect that this particular person don't have any type of diabetes, so we will label them as 0, and so on. So this is how we are going to understand our data. The next step will be is to pre-process our data. The reason why we are, as a data scientist, we are processing our data or our raw clinical data is to make it compatible with any machine learning or deep learning model. So some of the times we have databases that is missing some very important information in the database. So for example, we have this person number 3, and they have all the reading except for the blood pressure. They don't have blood pressure reading, and also they don't have insulin score reading. So in this case, we are not our data is not consistent enough to build our machine learning or deep learning model. So we have to process it. We have to figure out a way to make it consistent and to make the problem solved. There's many techniques in order to clean and to process our data and make it consistent. First of all, we have to make our data consistent, and also we have to check the outliers, if there is any outliers in our data set. What is outliers? Outliers are some kind of data samples that are not consistent or not very close to the overall database. To give you an example of this, here we have the outcome is all about 0 and 1. So 0 means not detect diabetes and 1 mean detected. So if one sample of these 768 sample have the label or the outcome as 2, so it doesn't make any sense to put the outcome as 2, because 2 is not representing anything in our data set, especially because our data set is all about 0 and 1. So we can say that, yeah, this is outlier and we must remove this outlier, because this particular outlier, it's one sample only. It will decrease the performance of our model and make it some unreliable and some wrong prediction. Also, we can do some data visualization in order to visualize our data. Why we're doing data visualization? The visualization is to make things easier for non-computer science background attendants or non-data science background student or any other types of person. So when we tell as a data scientist, when we tell some person that these two inputs, let's say, they have linear relationship, they might not understand what is the core mean of this. But when we visualize things and when we draw lines to make it very clear to them, then it will be more understandable to get the point. The correlation matrix, it's a very important matrix actually. It shows us the relationship between the inputs, whether two input or whether the input and the output have a strong relationship or have a weak relationship. So let's start the coding now. First of all, we are installing a package called first of all, we are using the Google Colab. It's an open source platform in order to code in Python, and we are using also Python language, which has recently become the #1 language for data science and AI and modeling. So first of all, we are installing the WFDB package, which is a package to read the signals. We are installed it in this way. We put this mark and then we put pipe install WFDB, which is the name of the package. Okay. After installing this package, we're installing the Matplotlib library, which is a library to make graphs and lines, and also to draw pictures and to show us the pictures that we want to work on. We are installing the version also. We are specifying some kind of type of version. So also we are installing the Matplotlib library. So in this cell, we are obviously importing some important libraries. As we said, we import the library that we already installed, the WFDB. And here we are importing the NumPy library, which is a library to create and work with NumPy arrays, and also to put variables inside. Also, we are importing the Matplotlib library in order to plot our graphs. And here we are importing the sklearn library, which is the main key on the science of machine learning. This package contains some line of codes in order to build our models. It can build many machine learning models, and also it can train, test, and evaluate our models very easily with only 1 or 2 lines. It contains many different type of classifiers like SVM. We also can do random forest. Also, we can do many types of machine learning, especially machine learning, because when it's about deep learning, we will work with another package to build our model, the decision trees and many other models. So the first data type that we will come across is the signal data set. The signal data set is when we obtain the raw signal itself from the patient, and we can try grab some information from this electrical charge and movement. So this signal is all about electrical charge that are moving across a certain type of body. Let's say we are doing an ECG. The ECG will it's a test or measurement which is an electrical movement that will move inside the heart and draw some lines in order for us to understand the process of the heart, how the beat is processing, and so on. And from this signal, we can grab so many information, and we can also detect many diseases from heart arrhythmia, heart attacks, many heart diseases, and heart failures also. They can be detected using this ECG signal. And the EEG signal is also a type of this data sets, which is also an electrical charge and movement that will detect the special movement inside the brain. First of all, we will here in the Google Colab, we will put the CSV file of our data, which is here in our case ecg.csv. And then in pandas, here I didn't import panda. So I will import pandas, which is also a Python package, which is responsible of reading the CSV file. It has many other options. You can press here pd.read. It can show us here many information, many data types that pandas can read. It can be reading CSV, Excel sheet, JSON files. It can also pickle some models, SQL files, table files, and so many other data file. So we will use this pandas in order to, okay, I think we have to, I will import this again. I will upload it to the session. Okay, let's read it again. Now we have it. So here we have the ECG signal. Let's have a look at this signal. So as you can see here, it's voltage 5. So it's all about voltages that is coming across the heart and giving us some integers in order to draw them as a line and get the ECG signal as a shape. So this is how it looks like as a numbers. And here we are going to plot this signal in order to see the shape of it. So after plotting the signal, we are having this shape, as you can see here, because it's about so many rows, 400,000 rows actually. So the data is not clear to us how we are going to process this signal. But if we zoom in into this plot, we can see this shape. So this shape is about plotting the previous numbers all together, and we will have this nice shape of ECG signal. In the ECG signal, as we know, we have many annotations to know. These are the R wave. We have Q, R, and S wave, and we can see them here very clearly. So, as I said earlier, in order to give the data to the machine learning or deep learning model, we cannot leave it like this, because if I just feed our data into the model, this data will give us nothing, because the model cannot grab any information from this type of integers. The model will just see a sequence of integers that are not related at all. So we have first to process our data and grab some information and some important information from this signal. So in order to do this, we have a couple of steps we have to do. So usually the ECG signals have two types of noise, the high frequency noise and the low frequency noise. Basically, the high frequency noise is because of it's the power line noise, which is because the motion, because sometimes the patient will make some movement and make some particular things that will have a very bad effect on the signal. So this will lead us to a high frequency noise, which we are going to ignore, or we are going to remove. The low frequency noise is the baseline draft. We call it as the baseline draft, and also we need to process them in order to get the best model performance. How we are going to process this type of data? First of all, for this ECG data, we are going to pass the signal into a high pass filter with a cutoff frequency of 0.5 hertz, and this will prevent the high frequency noise. And also we will be using a low pass Butterworth filter of order 12 and cutoff frequency in order also to ignore and cancel the high frequency noise. The heartbeat segmentation, also about the heartbeat segmentation, we have to segment our heartbeat. What is a segmentation? As we see here, we have a sequence of ECG signals. So we have them as a one plot. So the segmentation will be to segment them into multiple plots. Heartbeat normalization is also to normalize our data, our heartbeat into numbers between -1 and 1. As we can see here, that the signal, or here, we can see that the numbers are very big. It's between 900 actually and 1010. So in order to make it easier for the model to absorb the information, we will normalize them between -1 and 1. To extract, and also after we did all this pre-processing things, now we are going to grab our information from these signals. So as we said here, we are going to report the RR interval. What are the RR interval? It's the distance between each consequence to our peak. And also we are going to grab the QRS duration, which is also the, as we said here, I can show you. This is 2 consequence R. This is the R interval, which is the distance between each consequence R, and the QRS duration is the duration of each wave. So we are going to report this information for all the signal, and then we are going to label our data. How we are going to label our data? We have some standard ECG normal values that will lead us to label our data. So when the RR interval is between 0.6 and 1.2 milliseconds, then the heartbeat is normal. And also the QRS duration, when it's between 0.08 and 0.12 milliseconds, it's also in the safe side. So as you can see here, we have the RR interval is 1.16, which is the normal case, and also the QRS duration is 0.84, which is also the normal case. But in here, we have the RR interval is 1.2 and the QRS duration, which is normal, and the QRS duration is 0.17. So we can say that, yes, this particular individual have some kind of heart arrhythmia or heart disease, so we will put this as detected as 1. So this is about the ECG and the EEG signals, and this will be in general how we treat the signal data with always some changes when we change the data set, or when we change the signal itself. Maybe when we are going to use the EEG signal, we are going to implement some other types of filters. The cutoff frequency will be changed, the filters will be changed, the normalization range might be changed, and that's all. For now, the next type of the dataset is the gene expression dataset. The gene expression is a very important type of the field of healthcare and medicine. As we know that our gene sequence are very complicated and complex structures that might be very useful for detecting some complex diseases such as cancer, and for recently, researchers are using them for detecting diabetes in the early stages, and to draw the attention that this individual might have in the future diabetes, and then as an individual they can do some task or some particular things in order to prevent the symptoms onset, or in order to make it not affect our lives. So the genetic code that describes exactly what your cells should be doing. As we all know, the DNA molecule consists of 4 bases. It's the C, G, A, and T, which are bounded together all together to form the full gene expression. For data scientists, it's a bit like a binary computer code, but instead of putting zeros and one, a sequence of zeros and one, we are putting a sequence of C, G, A, and T, which will represent some kind of information or some kind of gene expression. As I said earlier, gene expression itself, we cannot feed it to the model, to the machine learning or deep learning model, because it will make no sense for the model, as it's a bunch of strings and bunch of sequencing that is not understandable at all for the machine. What data scientists are doing is, or researchers are doing, they are encoding these sequences and these expressions in order to make them, in order to represent them in an understandable way and an understandable shape for the scientist and also for the machine. And it's most of the time it's integers, and they convert them into integers and float numbers. There is many encoding techniques for the gene sequence and the gene expression. This is a type of the encoding technique. We can see here there is a sequence of these letters, which are the T, A, C, T, C. They are represent them. They are grabbing them into. Sometimes they're grabbing them into a picture, and sometimes they are grabbing them as a molecule, and then they are encoding them into some types of integers and floats. So as you can see here, the DNA, it's a sequence of GC, G, AG, and then with a type with some encoding techniques, they convert them into integer and into floating points. This is all in order to fit our data and to make it understandable for the machine and for the machine learning and deep learning model. I put here a kind of DNA data, which is RNA sequence. As you can see here we have the first column is our patients or our samples, let's say. These are one sample, two sample, which is one patient. And for each patient and for each sample, we have a bunch of genes that are represented inside the data set as a floating point and as a floats and integers. So in order to understand this data, we have to have a strong background of these genes and what are they representing. For example, this data is breast cancer detection data. We grab it from the TCGA website. It contains 1,083 samples or patients. For each patient, we have a bunch of genes that might lead us to detect the subtypes of the breast cancer. In order to make it easier for us as doctor, for the doctors and for the physicians and also for the data scientists themselves, we are always looking for a biomarkers or a gene that is particularly important for this type of breast cancer subtypes. So the main objective is to find a particular gene from all of these genes that will lead us or that will tell us that, yes, these patients have these types of breast cancer. This is about the gene sequence and gene expression data sets. And for sure, this is for breast cancer, and we have many other data set for many other cancer types, and also we have one data set, gene expression data set for detecting diabetes, and we have it for lung cancer and other types of cancer. Regarding the images data set. Images data are mainly used in a very wide application actually and topics. It's more popular than gene sequence data since collecting these types of data is less expensive and easier to obtain. We see this type of data in many topics. Actually, researchers have been using MRI breast images to detect breast cancer. They also use these images to classify cancer into subtypes. We can see this images data set in a very wide range of medical applications in AI. Basically, for as Dr. Mahmoud explained before, we can see this type of data in COVID-19 detection, where they have the MRI of the chest, and then they are going to detect whether the person is infected or not. And as I said, also we have it to detect the breast cancer. The breast cancer detection, and it's a binary classification as well as a multi-class classification. And we have many types of images. Actually, we have the CT scan, we have the MRI, we have the ultrasound, and also we have the PET. We have the X-ray images. In here, we are going to build our model. I will explain the packages. This OS packages, it's a shortcut of operating system. It's for handling some OS things and OS errors. The TensorFlow is a package for deep learning. It's for creating the model and then adding the layers on top of each model. Here we have the NumPy, as I said, the sklearn, I already explained it. The CV2 is for reading the images. What else? This train test split is for splitting our data set into training and testing. We will explain this in the next cells. The sequential is a type of the models from Keras. We actually using Keras and TensorFlow together. The Keras is working as a background or as a skeleton for the TensorFlow, and the TensorFlow is representing the out API. And these are actually the layers that we are going to use in order to build our model. So in here, I'm putting here in my drive a brain tumor data set. I can show you here my drive. Okay, I can show you the data set in here inside the workshop. I have it here as a brain tumor data set. Inside this file, I have no tumor, no brain tumor, or there is, it's not detected, and here it's detected. So as we can see here, it's a bunch of images, and also here we have the same amount of images for no and yes. In this code, we are printing the number of MRI images for the yes and for the no in order to see how many images we have. So it looks like that we have 155 images for the detected tumor, and we have 98 images for not detected tumor. So in this code, what I'm doing is I'm creating the data set. So I have here the X and Y. Since we are using images data type, so the X will be a pure images and the Y will be the zeros and one. If we have tumor, then the label would be 1, and if we don't have the label would be 0. For sure, this can change. We can put yes and no, we can put 0 and 1, and we can also flip them that it will be 0 for detected and 1 for not detected. But the default and the most easier way to do it is to put 0 as not detected and 1 as detected. So here I'm reading the image. Here I'm doing a loop to loop through our files for the yes and no. Here we are looping through the yes, and in this loop we are looping through the no. We are reading the image for each image, and also we are resizing the image. Why we are resizing the image? Because that will make the model go faster. Because if we have very big images, and also sometimes we have a different shape of images, so we want to make them all 28, and also this size of the image is suitable for our machine learning, for our deep learning model. We are appending the images into X, and we are appending the labels into Y. So when we are this is the process that we are going to use. So in here we are to make sure that our X and Y are all set it up. We will see some images to make sure that we are in the right track and we are doing things correctly. So we are importing the matplotlib library. As we said, this library is in order to plot the images and show it. We have some figures, and here we have 4 subplots right near to each other, and we are making it gray in order also to make it faster. And then we will show the images. Here I'm doing some coding in order to see if we as humans can detect whether these are brain with a tumor or brain without a tumor. So this is the line of codes, the lines of code. First of all, we are printing the sample number 100 from the X, and here we are printing the sample 200 from the X also. Let's have a look here. This brain is with a tumor, and the next one is without a tumor. So as individual, maybe we cannot differentiate between the two images, but doctors, I think they can differentiate between the two. But the machine learning model or the deep learning model will automatically tell you that this brain has a tumor and this has not. So how this are going to be happened? First of all, we are going to split our data into training and testing. Here we have the X and the Y that we already initialized. And also here I'm printing the shape of the X train and the shape of the X test. So as we said, it's 28 and then 28, and these 3 are representing the depth of the image, which are 3 dimensions images. And then in here we are going to encode the labels from 0 and 1 to some encoding shapes that the machine learning or the deep learning will understand it. And here we are converting our X train and Y train and Y test and into Keras models, and the number of classes for sure it's 2, 0 and 1. And here it's coming to build up our model. So our model will be a type of sequential model, and then it will consist of some types of layers that will predict the future event. So here we are putting a convolution 2D layer, and then we put max pooling 2D layers. We are putting here a dropout, a flatten, and a dense layer. The question is how we can tell which layers we have to put here and which layers we are not supposed to put here. It's all about experience and also trying things out. So sometimes I try some kind of models and some kinds of layers together, and then it gives me bad performance. When I changed some parameters, or when I add some layers or when I remove some layers, the performance will get better. So the convolution 2D layers, this layer is obviously and always the first layers in our model, and it's basically used to extract the various features from the input images. So this is, as Dr. Mahmoud also explained, this is our image. First thing the convolution layer will do is it will detect where we have some dark areas and when we have some light areas. In this image, where we have no tumor, it seems like we don't have any light layers inside the brain. Whether you can notice here that there's one light point or light circle inside the brain, so that might help the model to detect that yes, this brain has a tumor. So first of all, the convolution layer will divide and split our images into some kind of features. So it will tell us that yes, this is a circle, there is no edges, there is some dark areas, there's some light areas, and it will give us a feature map, let's say, which will contain a bunch of features and a bunch of integers. So this will give us an output of a table of features. Regarding the max pooling layer, the primary aim of this layer is to decrease the size of the convolved feature map to reduce the computational cost. So as we said here, that we will have the output from the convolution 2D as a feature map, but this feature map will be a huge feature map. It will be a very huge data set that will take us very long to train the model and to test it. So what the max pooling will do is to reduce the number of features. So the max pooling will filter out these features to tell us that yes, this feature is important, and no, this feature is not important. So it will reduce the number of feature map in order to make the computational easier, and also make the training and the testing faster. Regarding the drop outlier, it's used to drop few neurons from the neural network during the training process, resulting in reduced size of the model. So this dropout layer will drop, as the name said, it will drop out some neurons which are not important, and then it will continue the training and testing with less computational and with less cost. The dense layer, it's also known as fully connected layer, consists of the weights and the bases along with the neurons, and is used to connect the neurons between two different layers. So the task for this dense layer is actually to predict. So here we are in the convolution and max pooling layer. We are just dealing with the features. We are not predicting anything at all. But when it comes to the dense layer, here we are going to make the predictions to build the model. And these activation functions also are also we have to try many in order to get the best performance. The learning rate. What is the learning rate? The learning rate controls how quickly the model is adapted to the problem. It might be the most important hyperparameters for the model. So in order to build the model, we have to put some learning rate, and also we have to put some optimizer. Also the optimizer, there is many types of optimizer. Here we are using the Adam optimizer. It's some techniques also to compile the model. And in here we are fitting our model. I can show you how we are going to build all of this. Okay, starting from here we are getting the shape of the image. Here we are encoding, as I said. Also here we are building the model. Then we are compiling the model. So we are defining our model as M1. This is just a variable. We can name it as we want. We can change this name. And also here we are compiling it. And here we are fitting the model. So this process might take some time. Let's see. first of all, I will show you to have a look of what are the parameters here. I already put here, yeah. Here are the number of epochs. What is the number of epochs? It's how many iterations the model is coming across the learning process. So this model will repeat the learning process 50 times, and this depends also on the data set size, and also it depends on the problem itself. So we can try many other epochs. For now, as I want to show you, let's put it as 10 because 50 will take some times. The validation data also, we will put the X test and the Y test. Oh, there is some point here why we are splitting our data into train and test. Because if we ignore splitting our data, then we are going to train our data or to test our data into using the same training data set, which will lead us to an overfitting problem. So in this case, when we are training and testing on the same data set, that will be cheating because the model already knew the training samples and the training features and all about the training data. And in this case, we are just repeating the training process. So we have to split our data into a test and train, and we are going to also ignore the testing set for now for the training process in order to test the model with the testing set when we are done with the training. So in here we have these parameters. As you can see here, I will just run this. Okay, this is the epochs. It's very obvious that the accuracy will be very low because 10 epochs are very low number for such data. So I just want to show you an example of this. So the accuracy for the training is 0.56. For the validation is 0.6, and also the loss. Let's make it at least 50 because that will make it. So you can see here that the accuracy is increasing. You can see the accuracy is increasing with the learning epochs. So we are now on the epoch number 20, 30, and so on. So, as I said, the fine-tuning tips in order to get the best model, you can handle the optimizer, you can change the optimizer, try some other optimizers for your model or for your classifier. You can also adding some layers, changing the activation functions. You can also change the dropout value. Also, the dropout value will play also certain rule. So here we are done. We are done with this. To evaluate our model, as I said, first we train the model on the training data set. You can see here I put the training. And also here I'm evaluating the data set on the testing one. So let's see here. I'm also plotting. So you can see here the model accuracy, it's changeable. It could be better for sure. The ideal one is to have a linear increasing shape of accuracy. So you can see here the accuracy for the testing is 0.86, which is not good enough for a medical problem, but as a data scientist, we can conclude that this model can be improved, but it's doing well as overall. So this is how we are going. This is how we test our accuracy. For the tabular dataset, I already showed you in tabular dataset. Let's have it for the second time. What is the tabular dataset? It's the dataset, the simple shape of any dataset that will contain the features and the output. Here is the feature, and here is the output that will detect whether the person have diabetes or not. So this is the simpler, actually, type of data. Here we are printing it. In order to show you some processing technique, I will use the tabular data because it's more simpler. First of all, here we are checking the missing values. As I said, sometimes we have, for certain individual or certain sample, we will have, for example, for person number 4, we will have all the reading except for the blood pressure. By mistake, it's not showed in our data set. So this is a missing value. We have two ways to handle this. The first way is to delete the whole sample. We will ignore person number 4 because we cannot have a 0 here. It will totally make the performance very low. And also we have some missing value handling techniques. We can also get the mean for the blood pressure and put here something close to the mean or the mean itself. There's many ways to handle this missing value. So this is how we are checking. We put the tabular data. As we said here, I put the variable. Our variable will be a tabular data. I'm putting all the data inside this variable. It's also a variable that we can name it whatever we want. So we are printing them, and here I'm printing the sum of is null is the basic function for checking if we have null or not, and we are putting the sum here. So it's obvious that we don't have any missing values in this data set. Also, we can check for the outliers, as we said. What is outliers? It's some certain point that is not it's not belong to the data set. So for the age, we can see here that let me have it as a 1 because the range of the numbers here are very wide. So here's we have the age plot outlier. It's a box plot actually in order to see the outliers for the age. The age is a feature from here. So this is our features. This is our feature, the age, the BMI, the insulin score, the skin thickness, the blood pressure, the glucose, and other type of features. And we are depending on these features in order to detect whether this person have diabetes or not. So for checking the outliers, we plot the box plot here, and we can see that all the patients in our database is their ages is between almost 25 and we can say 68, and the plot is detecting this person as an outlier. His age is around 83, let's say, but we cannot conclude that, yes, this is outlier. It's just a patient who is old, so we cannot detect this as an outliers. But in some cases and in some problem, yes, we can say that, we conclude that from the plot, we conclude that this is outlier, and this will decrease the performance of our model, and we will have to ignore it. Let's have a look of other plots. Here we are plotting the insulin and also the diabetes degree function. It seems like the insulin also it shows us like this out points. These are supposed to be outliers, but we cannot conclude. We have to make sure first that ignoring them will not make the problem or the prediction wrong, and then we can go ahead and ignore them. The data summary. What is the data summary? It shows us some summary of the data. So it comes to the age. Oh, we can see here that the mean of the age of our samples is 33. The minimum age we have is 22. And also the maximum age that we have is 81, which is shown here as an outlier. So our outlier is outlier here. This point is is belong to this person who is the maximum, who has the maximum age in our data set, which is 81. This is also sometimes it's important to understand the data. The correlation, the data correlation between each other, it's also a function in order to see the correlations between the inputs and the outputs, and also between the inputs themselves among each other. So we can see here the outcome has a little bit strong correlation with the glucose, which is very which makes sense, because having diabetes or not certainly correlated with the glucose score in the blood. In here, we are going to build a feature selection model. What is feature selection? Let's say, to understand this, okay. To understand this, what is feature selection? Let's go down. Okay, so in here we have 8 features. It says it's 9 columns without the outcome, which is the label. They are 8 features and 760 A's wrote. From these 8 features, there's certainly some features that are more important than the others. So we can say that if we take all the features in order to build our model, it will give us a performance. But if we ignore some type of features, it might improve the model. The model might give us better results, because this particular features might affect the model very bad. So we can see here how we are going to make this feature selection model. We are going to use the linear regression, which is a machine learning algorithm also. We can use it for classification, and we can use it also for feature selection as I'm doing here. We are going to split our data into X and Y. Let's do this. Our X will be the first 8 inputs, which are the features, and our Y will be the outcome, which is column number 8. Okay, and here we are initializing the model, which is a linear regression model. In here, we are fitting our model into our X and Y. So this is our model. We will get the importance, and then we will show them as a loop. So this is the importance of our features. We can see here that feature number 6 is the most important one. Let's see what is feature number 6. It seems like it's the BMI score. So and so on. Using this technique, we can ignore the worst feature. Maybe we can ignore the feature number 4 and feature number 3, and we can try building the model again and again to make sure that, yeah, these features are decreasing the model performance, and we can ignore them. If not, we can conclude that no, these features are not affecting the model. We can just keep them, and so on. We can see here also there is a plot for the feature. I put there a plot for the feature selection. We can see that feature number 6 has the most the most significant feature, and the rest are just almost the same, has the same effect. In order to visualize our data, I put some subplots. Let's see them. This is this plot is called the histogram. We can easily draw it using the matplot library, which we already explained it. So we are putting here the histogram. We are putting them as a subplot for all the features, and then we are going to pass the number of pins in order to see the shape. So you can see here that the glucose feature is normally distributed, and the rest of the features are actually they don't have any particular shape. Only the glucose have almost normal distribution histogram. Also, based on this, we can see the scatter plot. The scatter plot actually is also putting some scatters in order to see the relationship between between our data. Here I'm showing the relationship between the blood pressure and the age. And here we can grab some very important information from all of these. And here I wanted to show you the clinical data set for the patients. For the clinical data set, we are using the clinical data set to show the information for the patients. So with each data type, let's say we have the previous gene expression data set, we have the clinical, we have also the clinical data for each patient. This clinical data will show us the general information for the patients in order to the general information for the patients in order to make the prediction easier, and also to have information about the history of each patient. So here we can see we have the sex of the patient, we have the age of the diagnosis age actually. We have here the subtype of each patient, what subtype of breast cancer they have. We have here many very important information, and this is also a tabular data shape. I think from here we came across all the data type that we might face in the medical field, and also we come across how we are going to build the machine learning model, how we are going to fine-tune them, how we are going to make some tips in order to make our performance better and better. We are here in the end of this session. I hope you have a very productive and informative session. Thank you so much for your joining us. If you have any question or any comment or feedback, don't hesitate and to contact us. And thank you for Tedra for hosting us for this session. I'm not sure if Dr. Mahmoud would want to say anything.